building the DNA early on, not to get panic and to do the right thing at the right time and be as efficient as you can. That's my passion, to help those companies grow early on to the right, to the customer centric focus rather than be dispersed all over the place.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumi Tech, sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Turing, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and in media partnership with C-Tech. Let's meet one of Israel's top investors. Today we are joined with Noga Kap, managing partner at i3 Equity Partners. Ms. Noga Kap is bringing over 20 years of hands-on experience in the executive positions in the high-tech industry, as well as one of the most prominent women investors in the Israeli ecosystem. Ms. Kap is a managing partner of i3 Equity Partners, an early-stage deep tech-focused fund invested by the largest corporations, such as Microsoft, Qualcomm, GE, Tata, and others. Noga Kap, thank you so much for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders, i3 Equity Partners. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for joining me. The background behind you is beautiful. I know that it's not a virtual background, but it really could be for a lot of people. So I think it's a great place to be, especially, over the past year or so. Noga, you are the managing partner at i3 Equity Partners for almost 5 years now. And before we get to talking about venture capital and i3 Equity Partners in Tel Aviv and what you're doing there, I want to know you a little bit better and how. What led you to create this fund and be the managing partner 5 years ago? What happened until then, sort of the big milestones in your journey that told you, I want to be a full-time investor?
So my journey started as a young system engineer many years back. Maybe the highlight of that was a company called Mint, under the supervision, if you like, of the GM of Avi Ze'evi and Shlomo Dovrat. Many years back. And I was actually what we call in Hebrew the chutzpah type of person, coming up as a young engineer and suggesting a different way of looking at the company. And I penetrated completely a new, if you like, market. And I think that my inspiration is entrepreneurship. I'm not an entrepreneur, although I'm very much into it, but I was, at the time, I didn't know to call it that way, but I was coming with an unbelievable idea that changed completely the whole company. And on their behalf, I moved to Europe. It was European-centric type of company, not the American story, but European. And I moved to Switzerland. It was related to the banking industry. And that's where I moved on to executive positions, opened as I said, the first office in Europe, and then had eventually, after many years, I had 5 offices, tens of financial institution customers, very successful, just about going public. There was an amazing, nice company, New York Stock Exchange company, by the name of SunGard, coming to us and offer us an offer that we couldn't refuse. I was, of course, part of the managing, I would say, key people in the company, and we decided to move on. Thereafter, I moved to the other side of the fence, to the venture business, going back to Israel and joined Walden VC, an American West Coast-based venture capital, to their Israeli office, their third fund, and started my new venture as a venture capitalist.
Wow. And so going back a little bit to the first big venture that you're part of, when I hear you in that quick 1 minute, tell a brief about how you went from, working the company to being a key player to then being a part of the strategy, it seems like it's overnight, but it can't be overnight, right? Share with me a little bit, what that journey was like for you. And now that you're reflecting back on it, what can a young entrepreneur like me learn from the time that you spent in that company?
I think that you need the right environment and the right people around you in order to make it happen. I mean, very people are shy away from coming up to their management and say, listen, what we do is great, but we can do something even greater. And that's what happened in my case. I actually joined a local expo during the weekend that I was kind of bored while installing a new solution, a new platform to one of our customers. And I came across a new, if you like, concept of the Swiss National Bank that wanted to change completely the way that they interact with the local 650 banks in Switzerland. And I came to conclusion that what we have on hand is one-to-one of what they need, except that we don't understand anything in finance, in financial institutions. And I came back to our headquarters and told them, listen, what these guys are doing, this is a regulation. This is going to conquer the world. All the financial institutions in the world probably will follow. Let's go and do that. And they told me, listen, great idea, but do it by yourself. Try to be part of the whole revolution over there. And carte blanche, you have a ticket to go back and forth as many times as you need. And I joined the Swiss National Bank Task Force in order to embrace and explain the way that we would do that. And the RFP towards all the banks in Switzerland was based, 70% of it, on the understanding and the know-how that we brought from home.
Wow.
So that's something that we needed to have someone listening to me and say, you know what, we'll give you the chance, but leave the R&D and the marketing and everything as is. Let's see if it works. And as soon as the whole thing starting to roll, Swiss like Swiss, they asked all the banks to go into the new plan within 18 months. Each of the banks had a specific date of cutoff to change their way of working. And
Amazing.
we were the first with the system out and selling it like crazy.
Almost like a Swiss clock. Just amazing.
It was like a Swiss clock.
But it sounds like that a critical piece here, which doesn't happen overnight, and it's not just a request. It's sort of that trust that you build with the people that you're working with, right? It's not, it's not trivial that you're coming and saying, "Listen, I have this new idea. I want to try it out," and they say, "Great," because it does hurt the corporation in some way. It's a risk. They're losing you on whatever you're working on currently, and so it requires a lot of trust for them to be able to give you that responsibility with that request, right?
Absolutely. So there were a lot of discussions around it. And obviously, as soon as they gave me the permission to try and have it and just took me off my main job and just started to work on this specific project, that by itself took a couple of, I would say, weeks, 2 months. And then later on, the whole process was something like 1.5 years. And then we took everything on board and just developed from scratch what was required. And I was the first to implement it in the local banking industry. And thereafter, it was clear that this is really the new direction of the company. The company changed their name, and the old product became like the new product to the financial institutions. And it was really a great success. So that's what I call entrepreneurship, but you really need to listen to people. And that's true also for my companies at i3. I would like the entrepreneurs and the CEOs and founders to recruit, the top-notch people around them. Some of them maybe are better even than the founders themselves, at least in the subject they cover, and let them come to you and be sure that you are listening to them in order really to take the right directions whenever is required. Don't take it off and just say, you know what, this is not the direction we are going here. Just listen to great ideas that come up with people that know so much.
Tell me a little bit about i3 Equity Partners. This is not the first fund that you're involved with. You're the managing director of, I believe, BRM and then you were also with Walden. So you've done tech investments before. You've been in the tech ecosystem for a long time. Why i3 Equity Partners? What is it?
So first of all, this is the first fund for me and my partner, Ran Wagner, that we established ourselves. So that's by itself a great opportunity.
Startup.
It's a startup, completely a startup. And 3 things I would say characterize what we do. First of all, we are devoted to super early stage. That means we're really first money in the company. We take the biggest risk. Of course, we are choosing significant market opportunities and absolutely great entrepreneurs, but we would like to be there first, where things are still not absolutely clear, and there is a lot of work in the first at least 18 to 24 months together with the entrepreneur to build the company in the right way. So that's the first criteria. The second one is deep tech. We are looking at science and technology-based foundations, those that are coming from the academia. I would say 80% of our CEOs, founders, are either PhDs from the universities here in Israel or coming from the technology units in the army. So that speaks by itself. And they're really focusing on deep technology, which really disrupt different markets. So market-wise, it can be, if you'll see our portfolio, you will see that it's completely diversified. It can be urban tech, it could be mobility, security, you name it, critical infrastructure, and so forth. And the third thing that we're really strong at is definitely our connection to multinational corporates. Both Aaron and I are super experienced in our past life, and we are bringing a lot of value with these connections to multinational corporates. In our first fund, actually, those are our LPs, including organizations such as Microsoft, Qualcomm, GE, Tata, Temasek, and so forth. And in our new fund, we hope to include also the traditional LPs such as, the pension funds, the family offices, and so forth.
Wow. And so
that's what is characterizing us.
Now, when you take on the challenge of being super early, and I can feel the excitement that you're sharing here, that you get excited by the lack of, stability, right? By how much, you can actually be influential and get involved. You meet, let's say, okay, you meet a fantastic team and you invest and you're a part of it. Then the next day comes. How do you even know as an investor, because I'm sure there's both a fine balance of not to interrupt, right, and not to overbear, but at the same time, how do you go about thinking through where should I inject myself and where should I put, my emphasis with this company?
So first of all, obviously we select and cherry picking the cases that we would like to back, obviously, and you need some chemistry between you and founders. And as soon as you find that these people really appreciate what you can give them and they're willing to work with you, that's the first step. And what happens is that people are willing to work together with us. And if we have a weekly meeting, which they always attend, that speaks by itself. But in many of the cases, we have a call once a day, at least in the first year, or maybe even the first 18 months. And sometimes even a couple of times during the day. And those calls are coming from them to us rather than the opposite. So we are not imposing ourselves on them, but we are helping them early on to do as little mistakes as possible and to have the shortcuts in such a way that we all know that young startups will go through pivots and changes and all of a sudden market validation that shows that they are not exactly in the right product market fit and so forth. So building the DNA early on, not to get panic and to do the right thing at the right time and be as efficient as you can, that's my passion to help those companies grow early on to the right, to the customer-centric focus rather than be dispersed all over the place. That's the idea.
And so taking on founders that early, being what it sounds like the first institutional money, which comes with a lot of responsibilities, being a first institutional money. Where do you go about, thinking through cherry picking those companies? There must be a hierarchy of priorities that you say, these are red flags that I cannot, that I don't think I can work with. These are things that are pluses and minuses. If you have to picture, what are the really top things, top of mind for you, what would they be?
So in terms of, it's all about people, especially at the very early stages. So one of the things that we do heavily, as we spoke before that, it was like due diligence on the personality and the person, being completely transparent, being able to share also the difficulties, being able to let you know what's up when things are not necessarily going in the right direction. So that's one thing. In general, I would say that we are following the ESG guideline And that's super important for us, the environmental, social, and governance guidelines. And that's part of what we would like to see in a company. Obviously, in terms of the asset itself, we would like to see that we are talking on disruption an existing market. It's not a type of Me Too company, but something that is going to be completely unique. Obviously, with such early stages, there is a chance it will be zero. But at the same time, if it's successful, it can be huge. And we would like to take the risk. I mean, as we all know, VCs sometimes are risk averse. We are risk takers, absolutely, with the first money in a company. We know that. Our LPs know that. But we assure them that we are able, at least at these early stages, to bring these companies from where they are, which is pre-seed usually, to the seed and to the A rounds. 100% of times of the cases. Also in my background, previously to i3, I can assure you that all of my companies went all along the processes up to the later stages of their life, making sure that they know what they do, they have the right KPIs in front of them, and they follow them very strictly.
I don't know if I can think of a better statistic than what you just mentioned, but that's amazing. One of the things that I'm picking up here, Noga, is that it sounds to me like you practice being a founder over and over again. You're talking about entrepreneurship back from your original company, and you're talking about joining early and the excitement of joining early and the personality and dealing with those problems. What part of this? So now that we agree that you're a serial entrepreneur because every week or month you start a new company, basically, what part of the company building phase gets you most excited?
So it starts with really the very early discussions after the post-investment with the entrepreneurs themselves, laying out the business plan, and now talk seriously about the business plan after the investment is done, because we all know the business plan is mainly to make sure that investors are running after you, but then we have reality. And we have to take it and break it really into the details, from the financial part, which is the budget, and see how we want to manage it, to the hiring of people, and to the product. Product is super important. Many of the companies are kind of disregard the product at the very early stages and leave the function that is called product or VP product to a later stage and take it to themselves. Usually entrepreneurs that we are working with are all technical background, strong technical background, but not necessarily the product part. And we would like to see them early on bringing on board or having their minds into the product very early on. Product market fit is the thing that will make or break a company at very early stages. And that's the thing we are working very, very closely with these companies. Later on, of course, networking, hiring, getting to the customers as early as possible, and so forth.
Noga, I want to thank you so much for coming here. This was so enjoyable, and I learned so much, and I got excited listening to your excitement, which to me this is the gift that I get from doing this show. I have 3 questions, not about venture capital, not about i3 equity partners. The question is about Noga. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. We'll start with your favorite subject from middle school or high school.
Oh. You wouldn't believe it, biology. And I was supposed to be a doctor, a vet, actually.
Biology. Okay.
I was accepted to vet studies outside of Israel, because at the time there was no vet studies in Israel. But unfortunately, I was offered an offer that I couldn't refuse to work in London for a very interesting company. And I took it off. But later on, I came back to Israel with computer science and other things. But biology was my favorite subject.
Wonderful. And who would serve as a role model or somebody that inspires you on some capacity?
Actually, I backed Eyal Waldman at Mellanox. I was actually the first Israeli investor that backed him up many, many years back. It was nearly one of my first investments when I was at Walden. And for me, he is a role model. I had the honor to sit in the board for the first few years. And that was an amazing, I would say, journey together with him, especially his management skills and his spirit. Unbelievable. And we see the result. I always said that he's my role model, even before Mellanox became what we know today.
Amazing. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
Probably we need to ask other people about me, but I think transparency, trust, and capability to convince people.
I love it. Noga, toda raba raba. Thank you very, very much.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Really great. Toda raba raba.
Thank you.